Well, hello, fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 179. That is the 179th trolley stop here at PR from the Heart and the Children's Book Spotlight Series, as you are fully immersed in our summer reading season here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager here at PR from the Heart and the host of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. If you happen to hear a little arf arf in the background, that is, of course, my furry sidekick and furry friend, little Forrest. We hope that you had a wonderful 4th of July holiday, that you are continuing to enjoy your summer and your summer reading season. We're really looking forward to this particular trolley stop for many reasons. It's very interesting because, every once in a while we can always go back in the positive Wayback Machine. We always remember those treasured memories that we had growing up, whether it be as a child, whether it be when we were a teenager. And it's very interesting. Of all things that I actually remember, I was thinking about this today. My Spanish teacher, Carolyn Leonard, St. Mary's High School in Lancaster, New York. I remember when she was teaching us the Spanish alphabet, and she would say, W, X, Alegra, and Zeta. And that just came to mind for, I think, a very important reason today, because, Spanish is such a beautiful language. It's something that many of us, if we're English speaking, will learn when we're in high school or we'll learn in college. But it really goes back generations. And in many respects, Spanish is not just a language, but it's the language of families that go back, again, many generations for a long period of time. It's a beautiful language. It deserves to be spoken. It deserves to be shared. But did you know that there was a time where sometimes that necessarily wasn't the most popular thing, so to speak, that English was the dominant language, so to speak? But leave it to a brand new children's books from one of our favorite neighbors to really help us remember that Spanish is such a beautiful language, and the importance of connecting with our family in the process when we're sharing and communicating that language. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, or you can head on over to any major bookstore, whether it be your favorite big box bookstore or your favorite local independent children's or bookstore. The newest book from one of our favorite neighbors, the newly illustrated book, Spanish is the Language of My Family, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Holiday House Books, written by Michael Genhart. I encourage you again to purchase your copy. If Amazon.com is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, be sure to leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for, again, one of our favorite neighbors here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series, valued member of the PR from the Heart family. The trolley, it has traveled, technically it's the 6th trolley stop, but there was the one trolley stop where John Parra joined us in San Diego. But the trolley always loves heading out across the country to one of the most beautiful cities in the world, New York City, joining us, returning back to the program for his highly anticipated return, episode number 179 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We're talking about Spanish is the Language of My Family. Award-winning children's author, illustrator, and artist, John Parra, joining us back aboard the program. This is always a pleasure, John, especially when we have the opportunities to talk about a new book. And I literally think that this is, with all due respect to growing an artist, the story of a landscaper and his son, some of your best work to date. So I hope that you're enjoying your summer, and thanks for stepping back aboard the trolley with us here and coming back to our neighborhood.
Oh, it's great to be back, John. Thank you for having me again.
Again, we encourage all of you, if you are new to the program, if you're saying, this John Parra fella seems like a really good guy, right? I want to learn more about him. Well, the bingo numbers for this episode of PR from the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight Series are 2, 27, 49, 68, and 150. Now, you might be saying, well, John and John, bingo boards only go up to 75. Well, there's sort of truth to that, but not with a PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series bingo board. So if you want to take the time to learn more about John's award-winning illustrated books, in addition to his first authored illustrated book that came out last year, hard to believe, Growing an Artist, The Story of a Landscaper and His Son, published by Simon & Schuster, you can subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, and enjoy any of our previous trolley stops to see how we've grown together over the years in the process. And again, a special thanks to everyone who continues to support the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We just clipped 5,000 subscribers on our official YouTube channel. And John, I really would like to believe that in many respects you helped us to get there, so to speak, because you have been a valued, not only member of the PR from the Heart family, but a huge supporter of the program, literally going back to episode 2. So episode 2 to episode number 179, 5,000 subscribers later, plus here we are. I'm excited for you. This book is, I know we were talking about it already, you know, to kind of pull the veil back a little bit is that books tend to take some time to actually come out. So you have an idea of what's happening a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It's kind of like you know what the future looks like, so to speak. But this is something that is a collaborative effort between yourself and Michael. Can you take us to the origins of when you first heard about this story and when you really knew that this was a good fit to be able to work with Michael and the team at Holiday House?
Yes. This probably started a few, maybe like a year or two ago when I received the manuscript. And I believe it had a different title to it as well. But I just love the subject matter for a couple of reasons, 2 reasons specifically. One was the story is about a little boy who studies because he's entering a Spanish spelling bee. And I didn't realize there was actually a national Spanish spelling bee. And I thought that was really interesting. And I really wanted to celebrate that, kind of shine a light on that aspect to the story. The other part of the story that I really liked in Michael's manuscript was the fact was the little boy's connection with his grandmother, his abuelita, and how she was helping him study the words and study the spelling, but also talking about a time in our history where she wasn't allowed to speak Spanish, especially when she was at school. She was punished for it. And so based off of these sort of 2 stories coming kind of merging together, there's a lot of heart in the story and some catharsis that happens. And I really responded well to that. And I think that was the main ingredients that got me interested to want to work on this book.
There's also a similar energetic thread, so to speak, between Growing an Artist, The Story of a Landscaper and His Son, and Spanish is the Language of My Family. You're very connected with your family. You're encouraging children to be connected with their family. So in essence, with Growing an Artist, The Story of a Landscaper and His Son, it was father and son. Now this time it's the little boy and his grandmother in the process. Speak to the thread, if you could, about, there's so many different children's books, so many different messages. Family in many respects comes first for you, not only personally, but also professionally in the way in which you're communicating your messages, sharing with them, working with different authors as well too. Why do you feel not only that's important to you on a personal level, but why do you feel that books such as Spanish is the Language of My Family are really needed out there to be able to help the family unit become stronger even more so?
Well, growing up, our families were very close, and obviously, spent a lot of time with, eating wonderful meals, especially at the holidays together, laughing and joking, and it's just wonderful memories that I have. And I always have that. I think that sort of resonates in my art. A lot of the art is sort of based off of many of those memories. A book like Spanish is the Language of My Family, I think, is important because it's just showcasing that heart. If I had to say one word about the book, it just has heart. And And it's usually, again, I've said it before, where it's usually the parent or the caregiver or the grandparents that are buying books or checking out books that then read the books to children. And so again, this is another layer of connection between families and kids and families and their, you know, helping them grow and helping them learn and helping, you know, and sharing a special moment. I think it is. It's like a very special moment. Book reading with your little ones are a wonderful part of family and of your child's growth. And so there are certain aspects about that that I enjoy it so much. I think it's such a great thing. And again, my mom read to us a lot. She was a school teacher for more than 30 years and loved books. So again, it just comes from my family. I just love that part of being a part of in children's books. So just in a general sense, I think not just this book, but just in a general sense, children's books have that power to connect families and generations, multiple generations, in fact, together.
One of the reasons why I'm also excited for yourself and for Michael and for the release of this book now, this is the time of the year where grandchildren and grandparents are spending a lot of quality time together. I remember growing up, there would be times where I would sleep over at my grandparents' house, and you know, they crack out the sour cream and onion Pringles and the Planters cheese curls. Those were the, you know, they're not the gluten-free delicacies that I would love to be able to enjoy and do enjoy as of right now. But the timing of this message is really important because, again, you know, kids are able to go out and do so many wonderful things during the summer. But what does it mean to you, knowing the fact that this book is coming out now? You know, yes, the back to school season is just around the corner, but knowing the fact that, like, you get this vision in your mind when you have, you know, especially grandmothers and grandsons sitting down together reading this book. I'm not sure if you know, with the world of creating children's books, it's this, you know, you're always going on to the next project. Have you really had the time to kind of just soak into that feeling and just knowing the fact that, you know, thousands upon thousands of copies of this book are being out there, and that many of those will be experienced between grandmother and grandson, or even just grandparents and grandchildren in general?
Well, I mean, it is something that I am aware of at times. You know, at times. I mean, not all the time. It does come up, you know, in conversations, and I'm honored. I am so honored to be a part of that. It's just, it's a gift, and I never take it for granted. And I think it's just, again, it's a wonderful thing to be a part of, because this story will be a part of other family stories, you know. In a sense, it's sort of like, it's not this book, you know, once you kind of create something, it kind of has a life of its own after that. And so now something like a book, and this story in particular, is going to have a life very, you know, with a very specific story, and connect with families in a certain way. And I think that's beautiful, and I think it's wonderful that experience will be shared. And to me, it's I just it you know, you get kind of goosebumps a little bit, because you just feel like, wow, that's amazing. But it's kind of like outside of my, you know, like, it has its own love and life and story now that will kind of go on and be a part of other families, which is really sweet.
It is, and it's very interesting because from when this episode releases, it's almost 10 years to the day that my grandmother passed, and over the years, some of the most poignant memories that I have, as we're approaching the 9-year anniversary of PR from the Heart as well too, some of the most beautiful stories that have come into my life have been that connection between, you know, granddaughter, grandson, and grandmother in the process. And there is something about that bond. Before we talk a little bit more about the book, I mean, there's different, you know, we have aunts and we have uncles, we have moms and dads, but what is it, especially that connection with our grandparents that we have, that really, again, you know, here I am many years later talking about sour cream and onion Pringles and Planters cheese curls and potato pierogies, right? What is it about that connection? What is it about that bond, from speaking from your own family experience and then seeing, children, parents, and families all across the country and around the world.
Well, again, I mean, it's just it's a special bond, because the grandparent relationship to the child is different. Speaking as a step grandfather, actually, I have a wonderful, wonderful time when I'm hanging out with my granddaughter, Sophie, and sometimes she's here in my studio and we paint together, and she's asking me questions about art, or we're traveling and we're talking about books and we're reading books together. So seeing it from the other side now, already grown up, it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And I think, sometimes the parents are there, they kind of make sure, gotta make sure my daughter does her homework, they gotta make sure my son, they do their work at school, they have good friends, but the grandparents gotta get to enjoy it a little bit more. And then they see like little special moments that they have. And those are the moments that I really feel very deep about and connect with. And so in the story, the grandmother and the grandson, they're learning together, and they're sharing together, and there's these teaching moments that are happening. And I think that happens in a very a magical way, and it's a special thing. It's not the same sort of as the parent sort of child sort of way that it happens, but it's kind of more a little bit sweeter, and a little bit more relaxed and fun. And but I just enjoy it. I think it's just a special kind of connection that we have.
And it's a connection that's timeless, and it still lasts, even though, again, I still feel like my grandmother's here in our conversation, so to speak. And that's something that, again, we really have those treasured bonds, the memories and moments, they truly last a lifetime. We hope that you are enjoying your summer reading season with us here at PR from the Heart as part of our summer reading season at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Joining us, a six-time now guest on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, award-winning children's author, illustrator, artist, John Parra. We are fully immersed in his brand new illustrated children's book, Spanish is the Language of My Family, written by Michael Genhart, of course, published by the good folks, our neighbors at Holiday House Books. We encourage you to head on over to John's official website, which we've included in the link below. You can also head on over to Amazon.com if you'd like to purchase your copy of Spanish is the Language of My Family. While on Amazon, leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for John and for Michael, to let them know that they're doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. And of course, while on Amazon, as well as John's official website, you can purchase any of his other books, including Growing an Artist, the story of a landscaper and his son, which is still crisscrossing the country and going around the world 1 year plus after its release. Diving more so into Spanish is the Language of My Family, one of the things is that this actually has historical significance. In a note from the authors section at the very back of the book, Michael shares, when I was a child, my mother would tell me about not being able to speak her first language, Spanish, in public school in Southern California. She would tearfully point out how she and fellow students were humiliated and punished for speaking Spanish. Now we fast forward to 2023, John, and Spanish is a very dominant language. In many areas, Spanish is spoken more than English. History, it's important that we share these kinds of things, even though I'm sure there were many traumatic experiences that happened as the result of just, not being able to speak your own native language. Working with Michael and being able to depict this and to be able to let children and parents and families know that this happened. Why do you feel that this was an essential ingredient in the book, to not necessarily sugarcoat things, to keep things very real, but to really, blend this into the book as well, too?
I think it's really important to look at history, as it is. It really, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But I mean, it's important because otherwise, that's how you move forward. This is how you grow. If you're not honest with yourself, how are you going to grow forward? And, it's not about necessarily pointing fingers. It's just like, this is just what happened. And, it actually also happened to my aunt, Irma. And another reason why I selected this book was because she told me of the same experiences she had. So this wasn't just California. This was most of the Southwest, I believe. And in many schools, there was a policy where you just couldn't speak Spanish, and even on the playground with your friends, and you were punished. And, as a result, it really created a lot of, wounds. And but part of the story is sort of addressing that, but kind of finding, again, a catharsis through finding, being proud now. Like, as you said, today in 2023, it is a different world. And here's the story of this young boy who's doing the Spanish spelling bee and learning how to speak Spanish, and being in front of an audience that's being celebrated on how to not only speak Spanish but spell Spanish correctly. And so this is a wonderful sort of the aspect to the story, again, where there's the kind of the healing part takes place. And again, it's just an important part of the story. And I think, with one without the other, it just, it might be a little too maybe a little too dark for me. But again, it's important to address honestly, again, in a way that we are moving forward, that we are progressing in life. And this is the way it should be.
And it's also a way to be able to see how Manolo, who of course is the little boy in the book, he sees how his grandmother has so much perseverance and how she was able to overcome so much. And now they're in this beautiful series of moments together. You're talking about the National Spanish Spelling Bee as well too, and this really leads me into talking about the Spanish alphabet. Now, I know we mentioned back to Mrs. Leonard, St. Mary's High School, back when I lived in Buffalo. Sooner than we know, we're talking about the summer reading season, of course, but it's going to be the back to school season. Technically, any time that the 4th of July passes, you walk into any big box store and you see the folders and the notebooks and the pens and the pencils. You're helping children to learn the alphabet, and specifically the Spanish alphabet. So again, this is something that is actually going to be a resource for many children across the country and around the world. Has that also sunk in, knowing the fact that, again, you seem like the kind of person that really feels into things and take pride in your craft, but this is one of the things that I really love about your work, is there's like you're helping children on so many different levels. And I can just envision that, like, let's say there's another version of Manolo that's out there, and maybe he's having a little bit of a difficulty learning the alphabet. He's got Spanish as the language of my family as the go-to, and he feels more confident in himself knowing that he can master the Spanish alphabet. Has that sunk in for you, especially leading into the back to school season?
A little bit, I guess. I was always not the best speller in the world, so it's helpful to have books like this. So that way it sort of reinforces the learning process of the alphabets. And the Spanish alphabet is, for those who don't know, is there's different pronunciations. There are different little accent marks and different parts of the alphabet that obviously different from the English version. And to know those details, and it's important. And so I applaud all the students, and especially the Spanish spelling bee students who know this through and through, and can do it, because it seems like it's a little bit harder actually than the English alphabet. So I think it's a wonderful thing, that it can be a part of maybe helping those students. And it does have an alphabet chart in the back of the book, along with the additional information and reading material, author's note about that, which I think is helpful.
It is, and especially again, knowing the fact that this book, it doesn't necessarily have a shelf life. Now, technically speaking, when an illustrator put out a book, it's normally focusing on, the first a couple of months or so, and then it's kind of on to the next project, so to speak. But likely you've heard from children, from parents, from families, from educators, years after a book releases, and the feedback and the experiences that they have. You're celebrating, I believe it's close to 25 years, if I'm not mistaken, in the KidLit community, or 25 years. It's been a long period of time. Knowing the fact that, again, your work is continuing to make an impact, like, could you share this maybe one story that kind of comes to mind about, maybe one of your first books that years afterwards you hear this real sweet, endearing story, and, like, again, from the author illustrator perspective, it's like, man, that was so long ago. How could I be hearing about this now instead of back then when the book first came out?
Yes, sure. There was a story. Let's see. The book was actually that I did was called "Waiting for the Biblioboro," and this was a book. This is a book that's probably one of my most popular books, and it sells very well. But did this book back in 2009, 2010. But the response that I get from people is still fresh about this book. They still love this book. I still hear teachers use it and students that read it as a child and grew up with it and tell me about it. One of the people that spoke to me about it recently was one of the directors at the Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. She was saying that's one of her favorite books and how much she enjoys it. So that means a lot. That means it's special to me that after so many years, sometimes you forget all the books, all the work that you've done sometimes, because it just keeps coming. And but when someone reminds you of something that was that you did, that was special to them, and that they still have a special place in their heart with it, and that story that connected with them. It means the world. It means the world to me. I don't take it for granted. It's a wonderful feeling, and I'm so happy that I get to play a part in that. So
I really appreciate you sharing that as well too. And going back briefly to Spanish is the language of my family, I always love, of course, during each children's book spotlight series episode, to be able to share a favorite illustration spread or two. And the one closest towards the end of the book, my family cheers, my abuela is crying, and at that moment I know we both won today. If you really want to get an encapsulation of the closeness and the bond that Manolo shares with his entire family, and just really how, at the end of the day, we would all love our families to be, how we're all celebrating something very special, whether it be a National Spelling Bee victory or, celebrating a beautiful 4th of July holiday. That's ideally what we would love to be able to experience, so to speak. The reviews that you've also been getting have, like, again, very early on, because literally this is just, this is fresh off the press, as the expression goes. The school library journal had mentioned something very poignant. This is something that I wanted to speak onto the thread of, is the actual quote is: a beautifully designed read aloud that celebrates the importance of knowing more than one language. Now, this may seem like the idiotic question of the children's book spotlight series, but I think that there's no such thing as an idiotic question, just one question that is not asked, so to speak. But why do you feel that it is important for us to be diverse in knowing, if we have the opportunities to do so? You see, like, Rosetta Stone, and you can learn Spanish or German or Greek or any language under the sun. But why do you feel now it's maybe more important than ever to at least be open to learning, to speaking another language?
well, I think it's just a wonderful way, especially if you want to connect to more people. Sometimes it comes for different reasons. Also, the reason it might play a factor in it. Sometimes it's about your family history. Maybe you come from your background and your family came from another country, and you just want to learn maybe or you want to visit that country one day and learn about your ancestors and find out something about them, and maybe learning some of that language would be a benefit when you visited there, or just finding a connection to yourself outside of your own community. Sometimes some people love to meet new people and to connect with others that have a different point of view. And I think learning another language can be a benefit that way. I also believe it's a very healthy thing, to learn another language. They always talk about, for the brain, for the mind, when you're learning another language, it helps you stay focused, stay mentally well, stay mentally healthy. And I think there are benefits in that. So there could be many different reasons, good reasons that, hey, it's a good idea to maybe learn another language. And when I mean learn another language, maybe it's just, you just want to know some phrases, or just, you don't have to be a full scholar or fully study another language. But just enjoy the fact that you could say some conversational aspects of another language to learn and have fun with it. And I think that's the fun part. I mean, life is to me, I always feel like being a lifelong student. Even when I graduated from school, I was like, I know I'm not graduating. I never stop learning. I never want to stop learning about things. And I think language is just the perfect sort of one of the wonderful ways you can continue to learn and enjoy new things in life.
That's beautifully put and beautifully shared as well, because I think there's the part of me, I took Spanish, was freshman, sophomore, and junior year of high school. And then it was, I think, the 2 semesters of my freshman year, I actually retook, I think it took Spanish 101. I think there was a 102. So long story short, I spent a couple of years, learning and relearning Spanish. And I think that the extent of my Spanish that I remember is yo estoy, yo estoy el libro con Oprah Winfrey en la biblioteca, which I believe means I'm reading a book with Oprah Winfrey in the library. That's about the extent of my Spanish right now. But I did also have to smile on the fact, because again, one of the primary backdrops, Spanish is the language of my family, is the National Spanish Spelling Bee. And I remember growing up, I think when I was in 6th grade and we had a spelling bee in our school, and of all the words that I spelled wrong, I spelled chocolate.
Oh, no.
That was but again, knowing the fact, it just brings back these, I think that the treasured memories and moments with my grandmother were a little bit more poignant and memorable than the spelling, or they should say the misspelling of the word chocolate. Again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to John Parra's official website, which we have included in the description below. You can also head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can leave a 5-star review for Spanish is the Language of My Family, which is John Parra's newly illustrated book, of course, written by Michael Genhart, published by the good folks at Holiday House Books. Also, you can head on over to your favorite local children's or independent bookstore in the process to purchase it as well. But remember, if you head on over to Amazon, you can leave a 5-star review for Spanish is the Language of My Family, and let John know again that he is doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. For all educators who are planning your 2023-2024 school year, if you are also interested in facilitating an author illustrator school visit with John Parra, you can head on over to his official website. Again, the link below we have included in the process. Cultural pride. That's another big theme of the book. And, during the summer, we often see many different festivals. I know out here in San Diego, there was recently the Greek festival. There was one of my favorite festivals, the Lebanese festival. There is something about, there's something about that. There's something about cultural pride, especially if you are Hispanic. on your end of things. Speaking to that thread right now, why do you feel that connecting with your cultural pride is essential and being able to pass down these experiences, these memories, these moments with future generations as well too? Because again, we live in a very fast-paced society, and it's very easy to kind of forget things from the previous. So it's obviously doing our part to create a healthy blend of blazing a trail for the future for ourselves, while also, you know, remembering the past as well too, and honoring those people and things that came before us.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, I think you are just you're celebrating the culture, you're celebrating and sharing it. That's the thing. It's like you're sharing it with others, you know, whether it's within the community or outside the community. That's the wonderful thing about culture. You just get to enjoy it. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to, you know, have too much thought about it, but just you speak to, you learn, you speak to the people there. And again, I think it's just a wonderful way to pass information down, pass customs down, traditional things such as food, which is a big part of it, music, art. It's there's a lot of cultural aspects, and that's in every culture, you know, again, and it's something to be celebrated in any culture. And so again, for me, because of my background, and because I kind of grew up mostly with my father's side, who's Mexican, and I just really enjoy it. And because I have sort of that enjoyment, it comes out as enthusiasm and sort of a happiness that I just want to share and make sure. And again, I think it also kind of goes back to not only do I like being a lifelong learner or student in life about learning things, but also taking that information and being a teacher and giving back and talking to people about certain aspects that I've learned and enjoyed, and in introducing it in a positive way, you know. So you kind of demystify some of the ideas behind it, or some of the misconceptions maybe, and or just sharing it as a celebration, you know. And like I said, not giving it too much of the, you know, just other than just kind of an enjoying moment, you know.
From our past experiences on the Children's Book Spotlight series together, you know that one of the things that we love to do is to provide useful and supportive tips, tools, strategies, things that parents, caregivers, grandparents, educators can extract from a Children's Book Spotlight series and implement it and put it into the life of their little one. And one of the things that is really, that we're seeing in many respects, is a rejuvenation of the Spanish language and other languages as well too, but obviously we're talking about Spanish being the language of my family, that tying into the theme of your book. What do you feel are some specific ways in which parents and grandparents, family members can do their part to be able to rejuvenate the Spanish language, and even children? You know, little ones are doing great things at a very early age. What are some specific things that come to mind when I say rejuvenating the Spanish language? What comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, again, it's usually the parent or the grandparent that passes language down to the child. So obviously, if the parent speaks two languages, you know, by all means, share those two languages. It's such a benefit to that child. And you know, some parents have a fear. They're worried. Well, it might, you know, not hold my child back, but sort of they feel it might hinder them in a sense. But it's the opposite, actually. It's the opposite effect. So the child will, you know, whatever hindrance that you might feel that might show up, it disappears very quickly. And in school, you know, my father was bilingual, my cousins and aunts and uncles, all bilingual. And you know, they've excelled in so many different areas, whether it's in science or in local government or in architecture. or in teaching, or so whatever it is, it's like it's just the strength. It's sort of like learning a musical instrument as well. It's like it's just another strength that you'll have, that you can provide. And teaching that, especially when you have those skills, is so important, because they're going to listen. They're going to, well, especially when they're young, they're going to listen. Maybe not so much as teenagers, but they're going to listen, to that parental figure, and what you have to say and what you have to share. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give a child, is something from, that comes from you.
Those are the best gifts. Those are the ones that, you can't go into a store and you can buy. It's really providing more of ourselves, the time and the energy, the creation with the little one in our life as well too. I really love as well too. I wanted to mention that Manolo is very determined, and I think that this is, there's specific character traits that we all want to embody more. And I think that because, your book talks about societal change and hope. And I think that just being able that, even if you're moving through something challenging, even if it's just, man, I don't know if I can spell that word correctly, or if it's something even like more so on the opposite perspective, that the importance of being determined to know that you can do it. And it's interesting because still for some time, actually, behind me here in our recording studio, we have a John Parra original of planting seeds. And I feel that in many respects that Manolo is also doing his part, because he wants to be able to perform well. He wants to be able to do as best as he can. And in many respects, he's planting his seeds to be able to get to the point of where he is the victor. And he experiences, again, that super cool treasured moment with his family in the process. You have such a close relationship with your father, and really one of the true joys of my life, not even this professional career, is really being able to feel into and to learn more about the influence, the positive influence that your father had on your life. What do you feel that he would think, knowing the fact that you have this new book, Spanish is the Language of My Family? It comes after Growing an Artist, the story of a landscaper and his son. What do you think that he would actually say about this particular book? And again, knowing the fact that you're continuing to be able to have these, I think, get a little bit emotional talking about it. And, this is with regards to your father as well too, but I know how much he meant to, and how much he still means to you.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of these, most of the work, or a lot of the work I do is because, or the choices that I make in my art are it kind of comes from my upbringing and my closeness with my family. And I think my dad would just love this book. I think he would be very proud of the fact that, the story that was, written by Michael and illustrated by me is just something that needed to be said and talked about, because I haven't seen it being addressed before, and also celebrated, because it's about Manolo, who is determined to win this competition. Now, just because he's determined doesn't mean he doesn't fail also. I mean, he's not like a perfect Spanish speller in the book. He actually at one point doesn't get the word right, but because the other student also didn't get the word right, they're able to kind of redo the thing at this moment of the thing. And that's kind of an important lesson in life. It's like, you're not always going to succeed, or not every project you do will be successful, in a sense. And that's part of the determination. That's where the determination comes in, where it's okay not to win every game, not to win everything. It's part of life. It's a part of the process. But just moving forward, that's where that determination, where you feel pride. Because as long as you just pick yourself up and, you're like, okay, that's okay. I didn't get it right this time, but next time I'm going to do better. And next time I'll get closer. And next time I'll probably get it. So that's the thing. It's like in life, that's one of the important lessons that you learn, especially as you get older. You kind of understand it a little more. And but when you're talking to children, because sometimes they think, oh, failure, it's the worst thing possible, but it's not. It's not the worst thing. In fact, you probably learn more from failure sometimes than you do from successes. And because it teaches you, you remember it so well because you're like, oh, I don't want that to happen again. So how do I fix it? How do I make it sure I do better? And so that's an interesting aspect to the story. It's a little bit more subtle and, in the story in the book, but I feel because it's in there, that's important. And my dad always talked about that, the resilience, how to be, that's going to happen in life. And so that's another lesson that I remembered from him, that, you're not going to win every game, but if you keep working hard and doing your best and try to learn and do better, you're going to win enough games to be fulfilled in your life, and that's kind of where it's coming from. And, you just, enjoy it.
We're going to put a pin in the phrase winning games momentarily. We're going to circle back to that. There's always a thread with the Children's Book Spotlight Series episode, John. I'm really glad that you touched upon what it is that you had just shared, because especially when children know growing up that failure isn't a bad thing, their life is able to be at least a little bit easier in the process, whereas there's many grown adults that maybe had interesting experiences with failure growing up, and here they are 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, and when something bad happens, they can feel crushed. And, so it's really important to that resilience thread. I'm really glad, again, it's a subtle message, but it's something that's definitely being picked up on. And this is why, again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow Shining Stars, to head on over to John's official website, which again, we've included in the description below, your favorite local children's or independent bookstore, or yes, even the big box stores, if you feel guided to do so as well. In addition to Amazon.com, you can purchase your copy of Spanish is the Language of My Family, which again is written by Michael Genhart and of course published by the good team at Holiday House Books. You can leave a 5-star review, one of the many ways you can pledge your support for John, to let him know that he is doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. And of course, as well, to remember, if you want to be able to see how John has grown over the years, how we have grown together with John over the years through the Children's Book Spotlight Series, remember the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series Summer Reading Season Bingo, 2, 27, 49, 68, 150, and then of course you're now watching 179. Those are the previous episodes that John joined us, so you can enjoy those past trolley stops as well too. Growing up, I was a baseball fan. I wasn't a Dodgers fan, but I was an Atlanta Braves fan and a Toronto Blue Jays fan. And I just saw the news, and this is cool. There's certain benchmark moments where it's kind of like inner child John Parra has got to be like geeking out at this, so to speak. So one of your next projects that you're working on, one of the most beloved pitchers, not only in the history and the lineage of the Los Angeles Dodgers, but he really took the world by storm. Of course, we're talking about Fernando Valenzuela. He was a part of, I believe, the Dodgers. Again, not a Dodgers fan, so just speaking from the best of my knowledge, he was an integral part of their success. And I believe they won a World Series, or maybe even 2, if I'm not mistaken, at that point. Obviously, we'll talk about that on a future trolley stop, I'm sure, in the Children's Book Spotlight Series. But that's got to be pretty cool. I mean, just, knowing when you first came into this world of children's literature, and if someone told, you 25 years ago, you're going to illustrate a book about Fernando Valenzuela, like this has got to be a pretty cool experience for you.
Oh, it's a dream. I mean, Fernando's one of my absolute very favorite baseball players. And I grew up a Dodger fan because I grew up in Southern California, outside of Los Angeles. And I was there when Fernando Mania happened as a child. And, he also brought a lot of, again, sort of what's talked about this book, a lot of Latino pride in our community when he became a Dodger, and the things that he did and the accomplishments that he made with that organization. So I'm super excited to be working on this project, and I'm really looking forward to working hard and doing a good job, and I'd be happy to talk about it and share about it with you once it's ready to be shared.
Before we wrap up this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series, the back to school season, again, in certain aspects, it's already here. People who may be watching this episode several months from now, it's well past the back to school season. But this is a time of the year where children's authors and illustrators in children's books are really a lifeline for children, whether it be they're learning how to read, whether if they're moving through a difficult experience or time in their lives and they have this book that they can go to that kind of just, lets them know that everything is going to be okay. What would be your message? Two messages to share. One, to parents who are preparing for the back to school season. Maybe they're feeling stressed, overwhelmed. John Parra, I don't know what it is that I'm going to do. It's the back to school season. And then also for educators, your message to them, because you've worked with educators, you've been in schools all across the country, and you know that they, in many respects, if there's someone who deserves like more pay and really just more respect, it is educators, because they really help to lay the foundation for the success of our children. So what would be your back to school message for parents, and then your back to school message for educators?
Oh, well, for parents, it's an exciting time, when children are going back to, as I said, I have a granddaughter and she's going back to school. She's going to be starting fifth grade already.
Oh,
And so it's an exciting time. And I was just going to say, sharing books, I would say when, because summertime is a wonderful time to kind of, cut loose and have fun. But, also part of I usually save it for the end of the day is when I love to read, and also reading aloud to a child can really make a difference and make them feel comfortable with learning and school. And I know sometimes it can be anxious for some kids, but it's it's if you're always there to listen, it makes a big difference. I had wonderful parents that, even if I had something going on at school, I was very comfortable sharing with them or coming to them and talking to them about what was going on. And that's always a really cool thing, that you feel very good about and strong about. For educators, I would say it's a lot of work. Again, my mom was a school teacher for more than 35 years, and preparing those lessons and preparing that work and getting a new class and learning how they are could be an exciting time. It also could be a stressful time, but it's a rewarding time as well. And again, I think sharing books in classrooms. Don't be afraid to read aloud to your students. Especially around the afternoon time. It seems like that's a really good moment to share books. Usually after lunch, kids are kind of like, oh, we need to kind of settle down, and it just has a good feeling about it. I don't know how to quite explain it, but it's a good feeling to have. And so sharing books, and if you're lucky enough and I get to visit your school or educational facility as a visiting artist, author, it's a lot of fun, because I wouldn't be doing what I am today if it wasn't for a visiting artist that came to my school. And so a mentor, somebody that comes to your school, if not me, somebody else, is such an impactful thing for a school and or an educator, or for students, to really see the possibilities of what is possible. Because that's what the light bulb, the ideas really started to happen for me, is when that artist came to my school and I saw the potential in myself. And that's what we kind of want to give students. We want them to see the potential in themselves and have fun and enjoy. But that's a big part of the whole student learning experience. So with that, I say thank you very much.
And I'm glad that you touched upon that as well, too. I've had the opportunities to see you in action. This was at the La Jolla Rifford Library in San Diego. So again, whether you are a teacher, principal, librarian, you get all of John's presence when he is there with your students, with your little ones. It's something that, you know, I really can't even describe it into words. It really is an experience that you need to be able to have. So if there is that one children's author, children's illustrator that you want to be able to bring into your school, John Parra is definitely worth it, and then some, so to speak. There, of course, are the two ways that we close out each children's book spotlight series, which you are familiar with. But there's one last thing that I wanted to mention before that, and this is maybe one of the most beautiful quotes that I've heard in a long period of time. I believe you were in, I think, Maryland a couple of months ago at a book festival, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was in May. There was a quote: "When you found your signature style, art became fun again."
Yeah.
And I get a little emotional even talking about that, because one of the terms that I use regularly here on the program is the soul signature. And I feel that each children has a unique imprint, a soul signature. What is it that you want to be able to share to children, especially who maybe they don't necessarily, whether it be they don't know what they want to, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up, or they're feeling a little bit low in terms of self-worth or self-value, when it comes to inspiring kids to find their soul signature? What would you like to share to them?
Well, I would say, you know, as a student, the great thing about being a student is you get to try, it's sort of like a buffet. You get to try lots of things and see what you really like and see what you really care about. And so what happens is when you find something that you care about, you might not always make the connection like, well, how does this become like my future job or my future thing? You won't always know it right away. I didn't even know it, even though I loved art and it was always a part of my life at a very young age. But you just continue to work at it. You continue to be the best at it. And because I also felt that incorporating my family and celebrating those ideas and things that I cared about. What do I care about? So I always ask students, it's like, what's important to you? What do you care about in life? You know, in life, and think about. And then when you think about it a little bit, and you're able to connect it with what you like to do, or study, or work at, that's when it becomes fun, and that's when the magic happens, and that's where you're going to just reach your potential.
And I think that this is something that children especially need to hear right now, because there's many, this is one of the things I'm really looking forward to, is that there comes that moment where a child connects with their soul signature and they know what they're here to do. And it could be a couple of different things. There could be a few different facets to their soul signature. But I saw that quote on Twitter and I said, that's something that I have to bring up during our conversation. Of course, we are big proponents of Mr. Rogers and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and we continue to share, to keep his memory and legacy alive in our own way here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series and PR from the Heart. He always encouraged us, and whether it be through his time on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, whether it be college talks, commencement speeches, different sorts of events, and of course, most notably when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmys before he passed from stomach cancer 20 years ago. He encourages to remember those who helped love us into being. Now, over the many years that we've been friends and colleagues in the process, you've shared different people that have had influences on you, that have helped love you into being. You've mentioned your brother, Matthew. You've mentioned your father. You've mentioned your mother. Specifically when it comes to Spanish is the language of my family and the trajectory that you're on right now, this season of your life, who would you like to publicly recognize here on episode number 179 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series that helped love you into being, or are helping to love you into being now?
Oh, that would be my Aunt Irma for sure. We lost her last year, but she was the who the book is dedicated to, and who had the experience that was experienced by the grandmother in the story. But our memories of her were of just happiness, wonderful connection, and we loved her so much that she was a very special lady in our lives. So to Aunt Irma, thank you so much.
I do believe that Aunt Irma is smiling proudly from where she is, knowing the fact that this book is making an impact and will continue to make a strong impact moving forth from here as well too. And of course, we always go back to the fact that we have the abilities to help bring to form and shape our own dreams, our desires, our goals, our ambitions, whether it be to win a spelling bee, whether it be to write or illustrate a children's book. And we have the abilities to help others bring their goals and their dreams to form and shape. So for example, Michael Genhart had this message and he said, okay, I'm going to put this out there. There's going to be the right illustrator that's going to come along, and here you guys go, like this, so to speak. So of course, we go back to the genie of the lamp. We, of course, have a little segment that we like to call 3 wishes. You've received your wishes previously. So these wishes, of course, we're putting these out there for the collective right now. So I know that these children's book spotlight series episodes always involve a little bit of thinking and feeling on your end of things. This isn't the traditional, like, just talk to me about the book kind of thing. What would your 3 wishes be that you would like to put out into the ethers?
Oh my goodness. 3 wishes. Jeez. I honestly, it's just that the book is shared with an open mind and an open heart. So I'm looking forward to that. But for the students who also are struggling, maybe they're not really knowing where they're going to end up. Maybe again, sometimes it's a language issue. Sometimes it's the first generation that they come here. So I'm sending a wish out to them that that they stick it out. Because again, in the story, Manolo has to work at accomplishing things that everybody has to work at accomplishing and making things to change. But things do change. It just takes time to get it better. Last wish, just I want to wish everybody just peace, love, happiness, and finding that thing that makes them happy. And that, what I mean is, it's what we feel satisfied in our hearts when we do it, and it could be a hobby. Doesn't have to be your profession, but just making it. I always say just make like either art or music or writing or drama or something creative, especially. This is me as an artist. I always think creatively, but just makes doing something creatively, cooking, anything. Make it a part of your life. I think you will think differently. You will feel better. Also, exercise and eating right. So, but those are the things that I wish for, and yeah, that's it.
Once again, we encourage all of you, if you already haven't had the opportunities to do so, to head on over to John Parra's official website, which we've included in the links below. Also his social media platforms. We encourage you to continue the conversation, to keep it going post Children's Book Spotlight series as well. If you are an educator and would like to be able to facilitate an in-person or virtual author illustrator school visit with John, you can connect with him via his official website. But again, you can purchase your copy of Spanish is the Language of My Family, illustrated by John Parra, written by Michael Genhart, published by the good team at Holiday House Books. You can head on over to Amazon.com, leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so, or of course you can head on over to purchase the copy at John's official website. Anywhere books are sold, you can literally walk into most bookstores and likely you will find a copy or multiple copies of Spanish is the Language of My Family. And of course, as we hear the trolley, that means that it's time to go. I think I actually hear the ice cream man. We hear the trolley and the ice cream man. I think that's a first here in the near 5-year history of the program. We, of course, there are many more magical trolley stops to come. We are rapidly approaching the 9-year anniversary of PR from the Heart and the 5-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. So, of course, if you are a children's author, if you are a middle grade author and would love to share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's or middle grade book on a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight series, just as John actually did here this week, we encourage you to head on over to our official website at prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at PR from the Heart. If you are catching us on Twitter, we hope that you are one of our, that any of our tweets happen to come across your 600 that you now get. There's a lot of weird stuff happening with the wonderful world of Twitter. But again, however you find this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, we encourage you to share this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight Series as well. So before we forget, if these messages that John Parra shared and communicated from his heart, the messages found within Spanish is the language of my family. We've talked about connecting with your soul signature. We've talked about the importance of hope, the importance of family bonding, cultural ties, and everything under the sun as well, too. So if these messages have resonated with you, feel free to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel to share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That is episode number 179 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, and share it on your favorite social media platforms in the process. Of course, as well, too, we have more installments of PR from the Heart's Neighborly Reviews bookcast that are forthcoming. Of course, our dear friend and colleague and neighbor, David Newell. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the popular long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. David and I will be back in the month of July and onward with future editions of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, where we deliver the newest heartfelt reviews from the newest top children's books that are available from the top publishers, from, of course, those who are the shining stars in the KidLit community, those self-published authors as well, too. So if you are a children's author and would love David and I to be able to share your brand new book, to review your brand new book in a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, you know where to connect with us. And just as John is in the midst of as of right now, if you are a children's author and are looking to create your own book media tour in a city of your choosing, more information on that momentarily for John Parra. If you're looking to be able to share your inspiring story, to connect with more parents, caregivers, grandparents, and educators through the media, and to have us help you to facilitate your own book media tour, or even to facilitate 1 or 2 featured television interviews in a city of your choosing, now's the time to do so. Statistically speaking, the back-to-school season and the holiday season are the number 1 and number 2 times of the year where parents, caregivers, grandparents, educators purchase children's books, and where you can receive the most media support. So head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com. Let us see how we can be of service to you. Stay connected with PR from the Heart social media platforms, as John Parra is going to be doing some special interviews, just as you saw during the Growing an Artist, the story of a landscaper and his son book media tour last year. John is going to be sharing more about this beautiful message. So stay connected with us on social media. And again, one final time, you can head on over to John's official website, which we've included below, in addition to his social media platforms as well, to purchase your copy of not only Growing an Artist, the story of a landscaper and his son, any of John's other award-winning children's books as well, too. But Spanish is the language of my family. If Amazon is your destination, leave that 5-star review. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for John, for Michael, for the team at Holiday House, to let them know that they're doing wonderful and much-needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. We want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators such as John Parra, who again are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books, for your continued support of the pillars of our community, local libraries and children's and independent bookstores. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world one final time as well. Give a little tip of the cap to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. Of course, he reminded us in his own way, based simply on his weight. Somehow he weighed 143 pounds for his entire natural adult life. As we like to say here at the program, at the Children's Book Spotlight Series, he may have connected with Ponce de Leon at once a time previously, because 143 means I love you. So it's a great weight to be able to have as well, too. But it was also his way, in his own private numerology, of sharing his feelings for us and reminding us of our inherent worth and value. So as John was very kind enough to be able to spend some time with us here on the program this week, We're reminding you of your inherent worth and your inherent value with our 3 favorite numbers, 243. So there's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. And we are reminding you that you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, that you are loved, that you are special, just the way that you are. And eventually you can get to the point in time where you will win the National Spanish Spelling Bee, or win something really cool that or just some sort of really big dream that you want to be able to have. A lot of cool things are really happening right now, and we hope that that happens for you as well too. And of course, lastly, one of the best reviews that you can get in the children's book world is when you get 2 paws up from Little Forrest. So even though Little Forrest is finally calmed down a little bit here, you heard a little bit of barking in the background, Little Forrest has given 2 paws up, for Spanish is the language of my family. So we encourage you to be able to enjoy that not only throughout the summer, but beyond as well. So again, for John Parra, for Little Forrest, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you for spending some quality time with us here in our neighborhood. This has been episode number 179 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, and we look forward to seeing all of you once again very soon for more magical trolley stops along the way. Thank you for helping us to walk home, the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.